Right then, have you noticed how these really clever new computer things, generative AIs like ChatGPT, they've just kind of landed?
It's quite something.
It feels like one minute they were just, science fiction, and the next,
Hmm.
well, they're helping with kids' homework, maybe for good, maybe not.
Hmm.
And that's exactly what we're diving into today. What does this incredibly fast arrival actually mean for education, particularly for our youngsters?
Indeed. And here at the deep dive, as you can find, well, our job is really to cut through all the noise, take a big pile of information, and pull out the crucial bits for you.
Yeah, distill it down.
Precisely. Today, that pile is it's really interesting meta-analysis. It pulls together findings from 51 different studies, all looking at ChatGPT's impact on student learning.
51. Wow.
And what's really striking is just how recent this all is. These studies, they were done between November 2022 and February 2025.
That's incredibly recent, barely yesterday in research terms.
It really highlights how new and fast-moving this whole field is. We're talking about something unfolding practically in real time.
Absolutely. So our mission today, it's got a couple of layers, hasn't it? First, just get our heads around the main takeaways from all this research. What's ChatGPT actually doing in the classroom?
Right.
But also, and this is where I find it fascinating, to think about whether there are echoes here. Parallels with other big technologies that totally shifted how we learn and live.
That's a key question.
And to help us unpack all this, with his usual knack for synthesizing information, we have our expert with us.
Right, let's jump straight in. What did this big meta-analysis actually find? Well, across those 51 studies, they looked at three main areas. Learning performance, so how well students actually learn.
Okay.
Learning perception, how students feel about their learning.
Right, their attitude.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And finally, higher order thinking skills. And the headline finding. Generally positive, right across the board.
Okay, generally positive. That sounds promising, but let's break that down a bit. What does that mean in practice? Let's start with learning performance.
Okay.
The study says there's a large positive impact. They give this number, a mean effect size, G, of 0.867. For someone like me, what does large positive impact actually translate to for a student?
Well, practically speaking, a large positive impact like that, it suggests a really noticeable improvement. Students using ChatGPT in these studies were, on average, significantly better at understanding the material, meeting learning goals, maybe getting better marks on tests.
But a real tangible difference then.
Potentially quite a significant leg up in their understanding and results.
Okay. And what about how students felt about learning? The study mentioned a moderately positive impact there, G equals 0.456. So were they happier learning this way?
That seems to be the gist of it,
Yeah.
A moderately positive impact on perception suggests students generally had a better feeling about their learning when ChatGPT was involved. Maybe it felt more engaging, or perhaps less intimidating, more accessible, perhaps tailored even.
Interesting. So not just potentially doing better, but feeling a bit better about the whole process too.
Seems like it.
Now, the third bit, higher order thinking, critical analysis, problem solving, creativity. That was also moderately positive, G equals 0.457. How might a tool like ChatGPT nudge those skills along?
Well, this is where it gets quite nuanced. The thinking is that by, say, quickly providing background info or explaining a complex idea in a different way,
Okay.
ChatGPT might free up some, cognitive bandwidth for the student, allows them to focus less on just finding information and more on analyzing it, constructing arguments, maybe generating creative solutions. It can act like a kind of assistant.
An assistant, right, help them with the groundwork so they can focus higher up.
Potentially helping them dig a bit deeper into the actual thinking part.
Okay, that paints a pretty encouraging overall picture.
Yeah.
But research is never that simple. The study mentions nuances and moderating factors. That usually means the devil's in the details, right?
Yeah.
Where did the impact change depending on how it was used?
Absolutely. And the analysis was clear. This positive effect isn't a blanket thing. It really depends. For learning performance, for instance, courses focused on skills and competencies development showed the biggest boost.
Can you give an example, like what kind of course?
Things like maybe learning a specific programming language or mastering a technical procedure. Things where practice and maybe immediate feedback are key. ChatGPT can be like a tireless practice partner there.
Okay.
And interestingly, problem-based learning also showed a really significant effect, perhaps because ChatGPT can help break down complex problems.
That makes intuitive sense, yeah. Skills, problems. Where did it have less impact then?
Well, project-based learning showed a weaker positive impact on performance, much weaker, actually.
Oh, why might that be?
That's a good question. Perhaps the very nature of long, complex projects means that quick answers from an AI have less influence on the overall deeper learning outcomes. Or maybe those benefits are harder to measure in the short term.
Could be.
Also, and this is crucial, how long they use ChatGPT mattered a lot for performance. Interventions lasting, say, 4 to 8 weeks showed substantially bigger effects than just using it for a week or less.
Right, so just dipping your toe in might not do much. You need sustained use to see the real benefit.
It looks that way. You probably need time to figure out how to use it well as a learning tool, not just an answer machine.
Makes sense. And for learning perception, how they felt about it, did duration matter there too?
Duration was the main factor there. Interventions lasting more than 8 weeks showed the largest positive effect on how students felt.
Longer than 8 weeks. Wow.
Suggests that building that positive experience over a decent chunk of time can really shift attitudes towards learning itself.
So perseverance pays off in terms of feeling better about learning.
Got it. And the last one, higher order thinking. Any specific context where it's shown?
Yes, definitely. For higher order thinking, the subject area seemed important. STEM fields, science, tech, engineering, maths, and related courses saw a particularly strong positive effect.
STEM. Interesting. Why there, do you think?
Hard to say for sure from this analysis alone, but maybe the structured nature of problem solving in STEM lends itself well to AI assistance. Also, crucially, how ChatGPT was used mattered. It was most effective for higher order thinking when it acted as an intelligent tutor.
An intelligent tutor. What does that mean in practice?
It means not just spitting out facts, but providing, say, tailored guidance, feedback, maybe asking Socratic questions to prompt deeper thought, more interactive.
Guiding the thinking, not just providing the answer.
Precisely. When it's used more actively, more pedagogically, that's when it seems to spark that critical thinking best.
Thistles. It really feels like we're smack bang in the middle of a massive societal experiment, doesn't it? That's a very apt way to describe it, I think.
Especially throwing this tech into education, with children whose learning habits and critical thinking are still developing.
It is absolutely a large-scale societal experiment, and the stakes feel quite high. The meta-analysis definitely points to potential benefits we've talked about: personalized learning, explaining tricky concepts, feedback on writing, sparking ideas.
Yeah, those sound really positive.
But
But there are always buts. What were the downsides or warnings flagged in the research?
oh, definitely. They were clear about potential limitations. Things like, well, ChatGPT getting things plain wrong sometimes.
Which it does.
The potential for plagiarism obviously increases or becomes easier, perhaps. There's the risk of over-reliant students maybe not developing their own problem-solving muscles.
Becoming too dependent.
Exactly. And the fact that the information isn't always accurate or nuanced, that could actually hinder critical thinking if students just accept it wholesale without questioning.
Right, you need to evaluate the output, not just copy it.
Critically important. And the researchers specifically recommended using proper educational frameworks. They mention Bloom's taxonomy, for instance.
Yes, the levels of thinking.
Using those kinds of scaffolds when using ChatGPT for higher order tasks, it underlines the need for guidance, for structure. It's not just plug and play.
This whole conversation, the speed of it, the uncertainty, it really makes me think about other huge tech shifts. It feels a bit like the early days of the World Wide Web, the internet generally.
That's a very insightful parallel, actually.
That was another case, wasn't it? This massive technological capability arrived. But did anyone really know exactly how we'd all end up using it day to day back in, say, 1995?
Not really, no. The internet was this incredible technical solution, but the widespread need, or the specific applications, they kind of emerged after it arrived.
Exactly.
And it took time for it to weave itself into education, into society, often in ways nobody fully predicted at the start. Access to information exploded, which was amazing.
But it also brought huge challenges around verifying information, digital literacy, even attention span.
Precisely. We saw immense potential, but also a lot of unforeseen consequences and adjustments needed along the way.
So could we be seeing history repeat itself, in a way, with generative AI in education now? This rapid rollout, especially for kids.
It's certainly a possibility we need to consider very seriously. The way AI is being integrated now, it could well be analogous to those early, less regulated, less understood phases of internet adoption.
Yeah.
We're seeing the exciting potential, the wow factor, but we also need to be asking those hard questions about the long-term effects on how children learn, how they think, how they interact with information, and indeed with each other.
It feels like we're building the plane while flying it, especially where kids' education is concerned.
That's not an unfair assessment, I'd say.
Okay, so let's try and pull this together. This deep dive into the research. It shows that ChatGPT does have real promise in education. It can offer significant benefits for learning.
The potential is definitely there in the data.
But, and it's a huge but, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Its effectiveness is really nuanced. It's not automatic. It heavily depends on how it's used, for how long, the subject, the teaching approach.
Absolutely. Context is everything.
And this whole rapid integration, particularly for younger learners, it really does feel like this grand societal experiment with consequences we don't fully understand yet.
Couldn't agree more. And that parallel we drew with the internet's arrival leads us to a really critical question, I think, for you listening. Given that history, what lessons can we actually learn from the internet's integration as we navigate bringing generative AI into schools and universities?
Yeah, how do we get this right?
How do we maximize those benefits we talked about while actively mitigating the risks, the inaccuracies, the potential for over-reliance, the impact on critical thinking, especially for our children?
We need to be thinking about those long-term ripples, don't we? The maybe unintended consequences of this technological wave.
Vital that we do. It requires ongoing attention, critical evaluation, and probably quite a bit of adaptation as we learn more.
Definitely some important things to mull over there. Thanks for diving deep with us today into this incredibly fast-moving and, frankly, quite complex topic.
A pleasure. It's certainly one to keep watching.
Absolutely. Until the next time.